Crazy Stupid Podcast.
There are flaws in the jujutsu's policies in the way that they sort of interact with things. And like, you're not solving problems. Like, you're just dealing with symptoms. I think why I sympathize with Ghetto so much is like, he is a product of what happens when people in charge of these structures only deal with symptoms.
The problem in the show is that like humanity is like the author of its own demise, right? Like the curses that are popping up because of humanity's fear and violence and emotion. And then the show takes it another step where they're like, and also the earth itself is producing curses because of the way that humanity is treating the planet.
Yeah.
And so like on two different levels, like you have humanity just sort of creating this situation where they are in danger all the time because of their own actions. And then you have people like the sorcerers. Ghetto is in rooms with people all the time that have like the ability to do something about it. Like they're the only people on the planet that can do anything about it. Right, like the sorcerers and then all the people in charge are the only people on the planet who can do anything about it. But like as he's looking around, it's like to them it's like very run of the mill. Like it's just kind of like a job or a game or like a thing to like get better at, like a skill to build. Like it feels very like day to day. Like even when he's talking to the other sorcerer guy, he's like, "Can you like keep doing this? Like, do you feel like you can do this?" And the guy's like, "I mean, I guess. Like, I've never really thought about it. Like, it's cool with me."
Even when he dies, and Kento's like, "Can we just send Gojo to just deal with this all the time?" Like, it's like an errand, you know? Yeah.
So it's like they're just like, it's like literally just an errand, like just run of the mill. But Ghetto is the only one that has to literally ingest the trauma of it every time because that's his thing. He absorbs it. So while everybody else is like I think like the thing that happened with the girl was traumatic for both of them, right?
Yeah.
But Gojo out of that got stronger. That's like his biggest takeaway out of that whole thing is like because of what happened, he tapped into like a whole nother level of his capabilities and became like this superhuman tool that now he feels even more powerful and capable to do things about it. But for Ghetto, he didn't get that. That situation made him feel less powerful. It made him feel like powerless.
Yeah.
And then he's just like you said, going through the motions of all of this stuff. But for him, it's like it's hitting him different because the way he has to interact with it. And then it kind of taps into what you were saying, like because the people that he's surrounded by and all the people above them who have the ability to do something about this are just not that invested in doing something about it.
Yeah.
And also, when they're questioned about it, they brush it off because he met that girl who was like, she's like, what? She's a grade 1, right? And she doesn't do missions because she's like, I'm more interested in trying to solve problems, but like they're not interested in that. So he sees like that's getting brushed off. So he is then left to like come up with a solution for himself. And obviously the solution he comes up with is like not the most helpful or productive one. But it happens because everybody around him is like doing nothing. And I feel like it's a very good allegory for like, obviously like climate change, right? Like I feel like something that they're pulling at.
Yeah.
And in the same way that like the people in charge right now are like, they're not really they don't have the same sense of urgency around this that like particularly younger people have.
Right.
And so out of that, you are seeing younger people come out with like solutions that probably aren't that productive. Like there's like a very fast growing sense of kind of just like nihilism about the world right now, about like, what's the point of having kids? Some people are even like, it's unethical, don't have kids. Like, what's the point of doing, like that sort of attitude is sort of like really cementing itself in a younger group of people because they're like, all the people who can do something about this are doing nothing. So I am now powerless in this situation. And the only thing I can really control about it is my own outlook about it. And so this is what I'm going to do. Now that outlook, I believe, I'm of the opinion, like that's not a helpful outlook to have. Like that's not going to solve the problem. But like, it's understandable why you would get there looking at what's going on all around you. And I feel like that's the same thing with Ghetto.
The conversation that Ghetto has with Gojo does change the trajectory of where he wants to go, because I don't know
which conversation.
When they're on the sidewalk and he's walking away Because when he says you have all this power to make the change, Gojo doesn't go down the route that Ghetto is choosing to do in a more violent way, but his approach of just doing the dirty work does pivot when you compare to what he's all about in season 1, where he is about wanting to make the change just more in a positive light. And I do sort of see that as like a catalyst moment for him, because it's not just about running the errands anymore. Now that he has his power, the idea is planted in his head by Ghetto the same way the idea was planted in Ghetto's head by that special grade, I forget what her name is, but the special grade sorcerer, that comes in and speaks to him. And I was really trying to think about, like, why do I feel so connected to this show? The show is very much in tune with what a lot of millennials and Gen Z are experiencing, like, every day, right? Because in Jujutsu Kaisen, you've got these young people that are looking at all of these structures of power. You've got these sorcerers, then you've got all these other religious groups, these other institutions that are not trying to make long-lasting change and power, right? And it does sort of feel like what a lot of us are feeling. This generation of older people that have all the power and resources and tools are just not doing it in a more productive way, and they are unwilling to give any leeway in allowing us to enter into those spaces. The author is very intentional about the words he's using, because Gojo mentions old people and conservatism, right? He mentions climate change like word for word, like he says it. So it literally means like global warming exists in their world, right? He mentions separation of church and state. And then he also mentions, like, you're not dealing with structures and root causes, right? And then he talks about trying to bring up young people and that no one has the right to take away the youth from young people. He says that multiple times.
And the other guy said that too. The blonde guy said that to
Kento.
To
Yeah. Which exactly. And that it shows you that is essentially what happens to a lot of millennials and Gen Z because of the incapability of people in charge. You think about school shootings, what that does. You took the youth away from those kids because that changes what they have to go through. They don't have the ability to get older and have a house, have a family because they just can't afford it, right? The stresses that they have to deal with now does rob young people of what they should just have as just an enjoyment, as their right of being a young person. It's just not there anymore.
I do wonder if for Ghetto, I do wonder if this was inevitable for him in a way. I don't know, but I'm thinking like after what happens with the girl, part of what pushes him over the edge is like what he's seeing in those missions, like when he's like, which view of humanity do I take? It's what he's seeing when they send him like out to like rural areas where like people who are sorcerers, well, they're not sorcerers, but like they have the ability to see curses, or they're like being mistreated. Like that's kind of like what shifts his thinking or pushes him to more towards that direction. Because it is like a complete 180, because before that, he was the one who told Gojo that was like, when the weak survive, like that's the measure of a society, essentially, is like, that's how it should be, is that like the people who are weak in your society should survive. That's how a healthy society should look, which I think is beautiful. When they said that, I was like, that is such a phenomenal like way to wrap up a worldview. I just thought that was great. And it's a complete shift. And I don't know, like I wonder if that shift could have still happened because of what he sees in the aftermath.
And just due to the nature of what his curse ability is, he has to be the one to internally process all of these dark, sad, heavy emotions that humanity is dealing with. And that's something no one else, like he says it, no one else knows what this tastes like. No one else has to deal with this on a daily basis. And they're sending only me to do this very dirty task of living in this filth, quote unquote, 24/7, no end in sight. And then he's seeing he's losing his comrades, and he's like, nah, this ain't it.
I'm also like, does he hate?
I don't think he hates humanity.
See, that's the thing. I'm like, does he hate humans, or does he just hate curses?
Yeah, because he says they when he's talking to the special cursor, he says, well, they both sort of touch on like evolution, like a bird that's pushed out of the nest, right? Forcing them to learn how to fly. And if they don't, that's it, right? And so I think that's how he sees humanity. If I can force humanity just through natural selection to gain the abilities that I have, the world will be better. And I think he chooses that path because he thinks the other, which is the one that like Gojo sort of gets to in what we see in season 1, is just like a naive approach.
But she hints at a third option. I need to rewatch that scene again. Mm-hmm. But when she's talking to him, she gives two options that are neither of them are what he does. She says one of them had to do with Fushiguro, the father, and the ability that he
Heavenly
had
Pact.
as a human.
Yes, the Heavenly Pact.
And she said she actually wanted to study that because she thought that could be a path to a solution, but he died.
You're right.
And also, she asked him and he said no. She asked Fushiguro and he denied her. But like that's one option that she gives. And then I need to rewatch it again to remember what does she say, because there was the option that had to do with the Heavenly Pact. And then there was the option, well, she says one thing where like the way he implies it is, so if that's the case, then if you kill all the humans, you won't have any more curses.
Yeah.
And she says that's true, but like that's not what I'm getting at. So there was two options and neither one of them had anything to do with killing all of humanity. I need to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
Because I do think that's going to be important.